Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. I guess it depends on what time you watch this video. This is going to be a video on Chapter 1 of the Uniform Plumbing Code, the 2018 edition. If you saw the intro animation there, it's it's up for revision, revise and resubmit for a specific reason. And we'll talk about that at the end of the chapter. Excuse me. Talk about that at the end of the chapter. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to go through this entire chapter for you and make a couple of observations and say a few things explaining these code sections. So with that being said, let's just go ahead and jump right in to Chapter 1 of the Uniform Plumbing Code. Title: This document shall be known as the Uniform Plumbing Code, may be cited as such, and will be referred to herein as this code. So from here on out, it's going to be called this code. The provisions of this code shall apply to the erection, installation, alteration, repair, relocation, replacement, addition to, use, or maintenance of plumbing systems within this jurisdiction. The purpose: this code is an ordinance providing minimum requirements and standards for the protection of the public health, safety, and welfare. That's pretty much the entire basis behind plumbing, is to ensure the protection of public health, safety, and welfare. And this code helps us do that. Unconstitutional: where a section, subsection, sentence, clause, or phrase of this code is, for a reason, held to be unconstitutional, such decision shall not affect the validity of the remaining portions of this code. The legislative body hereby declares that it would have passed this code and each section, subsection, sentence, clause, or phrase thereof, irrespective of the fact that one or more sections, subsections, sentences, clauses, and phrases are declared unconstitutional. So in other words, if this thing violates the Constitution, you're not going to sit there and throw away the whole book, just that one particular section. The validity: where a provision of this code or the application thereof to a person or circumstance is held invalid, the remainder of the code or the application of such provision to other persons or circumstances shall not be affected thereby. Essentially the same thing as it's unconstitutional. If it's held to be a mistake, the rest of the book is still okay. Revisions come out every 3 years and they get changed in those third year. Every three years it gets changed. Section 102, applicability. 102.1 is kind of an important code section because it shows how much precedence we have over other trades. Where the requirements within the jurisdiction of this plumbing code conflict with the requirements of the mechanical code, this code shall prevail. In instances where this code, applicable standards, or the manufacturer's installation instructions conflict, the more stringent provision shall prevail. Where there is a conflict between a general requirement and a specific requirement, the specific requirement shall prevail. Existing installations. Plumbing systems lawfully in existence at the time of the adoption of this code shall be permitted to have their use, maintenance, or repair continued where the use, maintenance, or repair is in accordance with the original design and location, and no hazard to life, health, or property has been created by such plumbing system. So you can have a house like mine, built in 1952, adhered to, during its installation, the codes of that time. Years pass. If nothing in the house ever changed, then that piping still would pertain to 1952 standards. However, you go in, you do some changes, you do whatever you want, like make an addition to the bathroom, or you add a washer box instead of a laundry tray or whatever, laundry sink. You have to then adhere to the current codes and standards. Maintenance. The plumbing and drainage system, both existing and new, of a premise under the authority having jurisdiction shall be maintained in a sanitary and safe operating condition. Devices or safeguards required by this code shall be maintained in accordance with the code addition under which it is installed. The owner or the owner's designated agent shall be responsible for maintenance of a plumbing system. To determine compliance with the subsection, the authority having jurisdiction shall be permitted to cause a plumbing system to be re-inspected. So it's not necessarily the plumber's responsibility to maintain the plumbing system. It's the owner's responsibility to maintain that plumbing system. It's our responsibility as a plumber to ensure that that maintenance gets done properly. So we're the ones who's actually, we're doing the physical work, but we need to be hired to do that work. And that needs to be given to us by the owner because they're the ones who are responsible for it. Additions, alterations, renovations, or repairs. Additions, alterations, renovations, or repairs shall conform to that required for a new system without requiring the existing plumbing system to be in accordance with the requirements of this code. Additions, alterations, renovations, or repairs shall not cause an existing system to become unsafe, insanitary, or overloaded. Additions, alterations, renovations, or repairs to existing plumbing installations shall comply with the provisions for new construction unless such deviations are found to be necessary and are first approved by the authority having jurisdiction. Building sewers and drains. Let's move that. Existing building sewers and building drains shall be permitted to be used in connection with new buildings or new plumbing and drainage work where they are found on examination and test to be in accordance with the requirements governing new work. And the proper authority having jurisdiction shall notify the owner to make changes necessary to be in accordance with this code. No building or part thereof shall be erected or placed over a part of a drainage system that is constructed of materials other than those approved elsewhere in this code for use under or within a building. So they're saying it's an existing sewer drains, it's an existing building sewer, building drain. You can go ahead and use it for a new structure. However, if you're putting a structure over a piece of pipe that isn't allowed within the building or a structure, you have to tear it out. You have to put in piping or materials that are used within the confines of a building foundation. That's going to be in chapter 7 where they identify all that stuff. Openings. Openings into a drainage or vent system, excepting those openings to which plumbing fixtures are properly connected or which constitute vent terminals, shall be permanently plugged or capped in an approved manner using the appropriate materials in accordance with this code. So, you know, stuffing a rag in a pipe and then putting duct tape over it, that does not constitute a proper method of capping or plugging a pipe. Matter of fact, here, let's do this. Let's say you have a pipe, right? And there's a pipe. We want to put a cap on it. So a cap goes over the pipe. That's a cap. Now let's do another pipe over here. And we're going to put a plug in this. And we're going to put in what's called a dollar plug. It used to be called a dollar plug because it looked like a dollar. No. It didn't cost that much. It was relatively cheap. So you have this rubber compression deal down there, and you have a washer that sits here and a nut, you know, like a bolt right there. And then on the top here, you have another nut, but it's a wing nut. Okay. And that tightens up and it goes inside. So this is a plug and this is a cap. I'm sure a lot of you have already known that, but you know, we're just going to go ahead and explain that to those that aren't familiar with what a cap and a plug are. Plug is female, cap is male. Well, plug goes into the female part of the pipe. The cap goes over the male part of the pipe. So those are the approved methods of actually permanently capping or plugging an opening. And examples of that. Section 102.5, health and safety. Where compliance with the provisions of this code fails to eliminate or alleviate a nuisance or other dangerous or unsanitary condition that involves health or safety hazards, the owner or the owner's agent shall install such additional plumbing and drainage facilities or shall make such repairs or alterations as ordered by the authority having jurisdiction. Changes in building occupancy. Plumbing systems that are a part of a building or structure undergoing a change in use or occupancy, as defined in the building code, shall be in accordance with the requirements of this code that are applicable to the new use or occupancy. There's also in Chapter 4 a listing of different buildings for different uses and occupancies and exactly what kind of fixtures you need for those occupancies in those types of buildings. Moved structures. Parts of the plumbing system of a building or part thereof that is moved from one foundation to another or from one location to another shall be in accordance with the provisions of this code for new installations and completely tested as prescribed elsewhere in this section for new work, except that the walls of the floors need not be removed during such test where other equivalent means of inspection acceptable to the authority having jurisdiction are provided. So this code section says if you're going to be taking an existing building, you're going to pull it up off of its foundation, you're going to move it down the road and then reset it up. You still have to test the piping that's already in there, but you don't have to open it up and expose it unless it's leaking. Okay, if it leaks, then you have to go back and do it the way it's supposed to be done and test the way it's supposed to be tested. Appendices. The provisions in the appendices are intended to supplement the requirements of this code and shall not be considered part of this code unless formally adopted as such. So there are appendices or an appendix in the back of the code book. It goes from A all the way to M. And those appendices aren't necessarily part of the code. They're more like guidelines to kind of sort of oddly quote Pirates of the Caribbean. It's not the Pirates Code, it's more of a guideline really. So the appendices are more of guidelines unless specifically adopted by the code. Duties and powers of the authority having jurisdiction. The authority having jurisdiction shall be the authority duly appointed to enforce this code. For such purposes, the authority having jurisdiction shall have the powers of a law enforcement officer. The authority having jurisdiction shall have the power to render interpretations of this code and to adopt and enforce rules and regulations supplemental to this code as deemed necessary in order to clarify the application of the provisions of this code. Such interpretations, rules, and regulations shall comply with the intent and purpose of this code. About this time is when I kind of make an observation that a lot of the terminology in this code book is very legalistic. It's because it's a legal binding document, okay? It's also straightforward and to the point. It tells you exactly what it is. There's no description. There's no, you know, hey, by the way. No, this is what it is, cut and dry, okay? So this is just saying that the authority having jurisdiction is the authority. They have the power to sit there and interpret what's in this code book. They make these rules. They apply these rules. They don't necessarily make the rules. The rules are made, these codes are made by a group of plumbers and the committees, and they get together and every 3 years they amend this code book. And then the municipalities, they're the ones that either accept the code or don't. In accordance with the prescribed procedures and with the approval of the appointing authority, the authority having jurisdiction shall be permitted to appoint a such number of technical officers, inspectors, and other employees as shall be authorized from time to time. The authority having jurisdiction shall be permitted to deputize such inspectors or employees as necessary to carry out the functions of the code enforcement agency. The authority having jurisdiction shall be permitted to request the assistance and cooperation of other officials of this jurisdiction so far as required in the discharge of the duties in accordance with this code or other pertinent law or ordinance. Liability. Let's see if I can go all the way down. Not yet. Liability. The authority having jurisdiction charged with the enforcement of this code, acting in good faith and without malice in the discharge of the authority having jurisdiction's duties, shall not thereby be rendered personally liable for damage that accrues to persons or property as a result of an act or by reason of an act or omission in the discharge of duties. A suit brought against the authority having jurisdiction or employee because of such act or omission performed in the enforcement of the provisions of this code shall be defended by legal counsel provided by this jurisdiction until final termination of such proceedings. In other words, an inspector goes out, inspects a project, passes the inspection, something bad happens, something horrible, horrific. They can't be held liable for doing their due diligence in enforcing this code. Applications and permits. The authority having jurisdiction shall be permitted to require the submission of plans, specs, specifications, drawings, and such other information in accordance with the authority having jurisdiction prior to the commencement of and at a time during the progress of work regulated by this code. The issuance of a permit upon construction documents shall not prevent the authority having jurisdiction from thereafter requiring the correction of errors in said construction documents or from preventing construction operations being carried on thereunder where in violation of this code or of other pertinent ordinance or from revoking a certificate of approval where issued in error. In other words, if you screwed up, they can go ahead and go back and say, hey, no, we're going to rescind that. You didn't pass after all. Provision for licensing shall be determined by the authority. And I'm not going to say authority having jurisdiction on every single one of these things because it gets quite tiring. Right of entry. I really like this one. This is a good one. I'd love to see this happen. Okay. Where it is necessary to make an inspection to enforce the provisions of this code or where the authority having jurisdiction has reasonable cause to believe that there exists in a building or upon premises a condition or violation of this code that makes the building or premises unsafe, insanitary, dangerous, or hazardous, the authority shall be permitted to enter the building or premises at reasonable times to inspect or to perform the duties imposed by the authority having jurisdiction by this code, provided that that where such building or premises is occupied, the authority shall present credentials to the occupant and request entry. Where such building or premises is unoccupied, the authority having jurisdiction shall first make a reasonable effort to locate the owner or other person having charge or control of the building or premises and request entry. This is the part that's interesting. Where entry is refused, the authority has recourse to every remedy provided by law to secure entry. Where the authority having jurisdiction shall have first obtained an inspection warrant or other remedy provided by law to secure entry, no owner, occupant, or person having charge, care, or control of a building or premises shall fail or neglect after a request is made as herein provided to promptly permit entry herein by the authority having jurisdiction for the purpose of inspection and examination pursuant to this code. So, long story short, inspector sees that there might be a problem in a building, goes to say, hey, I need to come in and do an inspection, shows his little badge, says I'm a plumbing inspector. And the person at the door, the owner, says, take a flying leap, I'm not letting you in. The inspector can then go to a judge, get a search warrant for plumbing and search your house. And I'm sure at that point he would probably bring some law enforcement and, take a good look. So why do they have that much authority? Well, think about it. If there is a serious plumbing violation, you'd want to take care of it. You'd want your neighbor to have good plumbing, because if it's not good plumbing, it's going to possibly contaminate and create a hazard, a health hazard for you, the neighbor, and everybody else. So yeah, it's kind of an important thing. Permits required. We're going to spend a little bit of time on this one section here, 104, 104.1, 104.2, because each municipality, when they get this, I'm telling you this based on what the code says, okay? This isn't what your municipality says. I understand that that this class, this lecture, I'm doing this for my plumbing class here in San Diego. But I know other people are out there watching this video, and it goes without saying that what we do here is not necessarily what's going to be done back east, up north. Every municipality is different. But with that being said, what the code book says, I am interpreting that exactly what it says. With that being said, let's continue. It shall be unlawful for a person, firm, or corporation to make an installation, alteration, repair, replacement, or remodel a plumbing system regulated by this code except as permitted in section 104.2, or to cause the same to be done without first obtaining a separate plumbing permit for each separate building or structure. Section 104.2 is the exempt work. Okay, so we'll talk about this. But think about it for a sec. You can't make an installation. You can't make an alteration. You can't make a repair. You cannot do a replacement. You can't remodel a plumbing system unless you get a permit. Okay, now, exempt work. A permit shall not be required for the following. Number one, the stopping of leaks in drains, soil, waste, or vent pipe, provided, however, that a trap, drain pipe, soil, waste, or vent pipe become defective, and it becomes necessary to remove and replace the same with new material. The same shall be considered as new work, and a permit shall be procured and an inspection made as provided in this code. So here they're saying, well, if you're going to cut out a piece of pipe because it's defective, and you're putting in a new piece of pipe, you need a permit for that. It needs to be inspected. That's what the code book says. Number two, the clearing of stoppages, including the removal and reinstallation of a water closet, or the repairing of leaks in pipes, valves, or fixtures, provided such repairs do not involve or require the replacement or rearrangement of valves, pipes, or fixtures. Okay? So you can remove and reinstall a water closet. But if you have to replace it, you need a permit. Okay? If you have to rearrange it or rearrange the valve, you need a permit. If you have to sit there and make offsets, do whatever, it's all considered new work. You see? So they're making that a requirement as far as getting a permit. Why do you think that's the way it is? Because it was passed once before. Just because you're putting in new pipe, what if you, or someone like me doing the work, we'll use me as an example. What if I do something that I think I did correctly, but it wasn't installed right, and it was a code violation? I'm taking myself on my word that I did it the right way, and that's going to create a problem for the customer. You see, so the thought process in this whole code section is it's new work. It needs to be inspected by an inspector to ensure that health and safety of the individual living in that structure or working in that building, they are afforded that right. They are afforded the proper installation, and it's verified. Exemption from the permit requirements of this code shall not be deemed to grant authorization for work to be done in violation of the provisions of this code or other laws or ordinances of this jurisdiction. Application for permit. To obtain a permit, the applicant shall first file an application, therefore, in writing on a form furnished by the authority having jurisdiction for that purpose. Such application shall have the following. Number one, identify and describe the work to be covered by the permit. Number two, describe the land upon which the proposed work is to be done by legal description, like a street address. Number three, indicate the use or occupancy for which the proposed work is intended. Residential, business, how many people, occupancies. Number four, be accompanied by construction documents in accordance with section 104.3.1. Number five, be signed by the permittee or the permittee's authorized agent. The authority having jurisdiction shall be permitted to require evidence to indicate such authority. Number 6, and by the way, permittee's authorized agent, that could be like a property management group, you know, where they manage condo complex, that kind of thing. Number 6, give such other data and information in accordance with the authority having jurisdiction. So if they wanted something else, this section here says, hey, if they want something, provide it. The construction documents. Construction documents, engineering calculations, diagrams, and other data shall be submitted in 2 or more sets with each application for a permit. The construction documents, computations, and specifications shall be prepared by and the plumbing designed by a registered design professional. Construction documents shall be drawn to scale with clarity to identify that the intended work to be performed is in accordance with the code. Excuse me. Sorry. Exception. The authority having jurisdiction shall be permitted to waive the submission of construction documents, calculations, or other data where the authority having jurisdiction finds that the nature of the work applied for is such that reviewing of construction documents is not necessary to obtain compliance within the code. In other words, you don't always have to sit there and provide construction documents, you know, scaled drawings and all this other stuff. What if you're only replacing a water heater? You don't need anything for that. It's a like for like kind of deal, right? So the authority is going to say, all right, we'll give you the permit. You don't have to give us all the paperwork. It's okay. And that's what that code section means. Where a plan or other data is required to be submitted in accordance with section 104.3.1, a plan review fee shall be paid at the time of submitted construction documents for review. The plan review fees for plumbing work shall be determined and adopted by this jurisdiction. So every jurisdiction, every municipality is going to be different as far as what the fees are. The plan review fees specified in this subsection are separate fees from the permit fees specified in section 104.5. Where plans are incomplete or changed so as to require additional review, a fee shall be charged at the rate shown in table 104.5. Time limitation of application. Applications for which no permit is issued within 180 days following the date of application shall expire by limitation. Plans and other data submitted for review thereafter shall be returned to the applicant or destroyed. So you have 180 days from day of application to get your permit. If it doesn't happen, then they kick back all the plans and everything to you, or they destroy them. The authority shall be permitted to exceed the time for action by the applicant for a period not to exceed another 180 days. But that's going to be upon request by the applicant, showing that circumstances beyond the control of the applicant have prevented the action from being taken. No application shall be extended more than once. In order to renew action on an application after expiration, the applicant shall resubmit plans and pay a new plan review fee. So essentially, you have 180 days to get your application submitted and permitted. If that doesn't happen, you can ask for an extension, and they can extend it another 180 days. So essentially 1 year, 360 days, just shy of a year. Permit issuance. The application, construction documents, and other data filed by an applicant for a permit shall be reviewed by the authority having jurisdiction. Such plans shall be permitted to be reviewed by other departments of the jurisdiction to verify compliance with applicable laws under their jurisdiction. Where the authority having jurisdiction finds that the work described in an application for permit and plans and permit and the plans, specifications, and other data filed therewith are in accordance with the requirements of the code and other pertinent laws and ordinances, and that the fees specified in section 104.5 have been paid, the authority shall then issue a permit to the applicant. Approved plans or construction documents. Where the authority issues the permit, where plans are required, the authority shall endorse in writing or stamp the construction documents approved. Such approved construction documents shall not be changed, modified, or altered without authorization from the authority having jurisdiction, and the work shall be done in accordance with approved plans. The authority having jurisdiction shall be permitted to issue a permit for the construction of a part of a plumbing system before the entire construction documents for the whole system have been submitted or approved, provided adequate information and detailed statements have been filed in accordance with the pertinent requirements of this code. The holder of such permit shall be permitted to proceed at the holder's risk without assurance that the permit for the entire building, structure, or plumbing system will be granted. So if somebody wants to get started on this huge, large plumbing project or whatever, they can submit for the permit. They can get notice to proceed on what was already inspected. Not inspected, excuse me, already reviewed, knowing that the rest of the system's not done yet. It's on the person holding the permit at that point, the permittee, to ensure that it actually will get finalized. Because if it doesn't, and it doesn't get granted at the end of the day, then he's lost a lot of money, you know, because the rest of the project hasn't been approved. So there's nothing he can do about that. The validity of permit. The issuance of a permit or approval of construction documents shall not be construed to be a permit for or an approval of a violation of the provisions of this code or other ordinance of the jurisdiction. No permit presuming to give authority to violate or cancel the provisions of this code shall be valid. The issuance of a permit based upon plans, specs, specifications, or other data shall not prevent the authority from thereafter requiring the correction of errors in those plans, specifications, and other data, or from preventing building operations being carried on thereunder where in violation of this code or of other ordinances of this jurisdiction. So, in other words, the permit is valid for the plans. They went through plan check, it got approved. If there's a code violation in those plans, it doesn't mean you're going to be putting in the code violation just because they're stamped and they're okay. No. It's a code violation. You got to fix it. You got to fix it in the plans too. You got to rewrite it because it was missed. Expiration. A permit issued by the authority having jurisdiction under the provisions of this code shall expire by limitation and become null and void where the work authorized by such permit is not commenced within 180 days from the date of such permit, or where the work authorized by such permit is suspended or abandoned at a time after the work is commenced for a period of 180 days. Before such work is recommenced, a new permit shall first be obtained to do so, and the fee, therefore, shall be 1/2 the amount required for a new permit for such work, provided no changes have been made or will be made in the original construction documents for such work, and provided further that such suspensions or abandonment has not exceeded 1 year. So in other words, you get the permit, you better start. You have 6 months to get going. If you haven't started anything within 6 months, then you got to apply for another permit or an extension, okay? Oh, which takes us to the next section, extensions. A permittee holding an unexpired permit shall be permitted to apply for an extension of the time within which work shall be permitted to commence under that permit where the permittee is unable to commence work within the time required by the section. So in other words, you have 180 days to get started. You can't do it in 180 days. You can file for an extension. The authority shall be permitted to extend the time for action by the permittee for a period not exceeding 180 days upon written request by the permittee. Showing that circumstances beyond the control of the permittee have prevented the action from being taken. No permit shall be extended more than once. In order to renew action on a permit after expiration, the permittee shall pay a new full permit fee. The authority having jurisdiction shall be permitted to, in writing, suspend or revoke a permit issued under the provisions of this code where the permit is issued in error or on the basis of incorrect information supplied or in violation of other ordinances or regulations of the jurisdiction. One set of an approved construction document and computation shall be retained by the authority having jurisdiction until final approval of the work covered therein. one set of an approved construction document, computation, and manufacturer's installation instructions shall be returned to the applicant, and that set shall be kept on the site of the building or work at times during which the work authorized is in progress. So that's your stamped set that has to be on the job, has to be there. Fees shall be assessed in accordance with the provisions of this section and as set forth in the fee schedule. Table 104.5, fees shall be assessed in accordance with the provisions of this code and as set forth in the fee schedule, which is table 104.5. The fees are to be determined and adopted by this jurisdiction. When we get to table 104.5, you'll see that there are no numbers. There's no fee number because it's this uniform plumbing code is adopted by several different hold on one second, please. There we go. Sorry about that. Work commencing before permit issuance. Stop that. Sorry, something's going on screwy with my little laptop here. Apologize. Okay, work commencing before permit issuance. Where work for which a permit is required by this code has been commenced without first obtaining said permit, a special investigation shall be made before a permit is issued for such work. Investigation fees. An investigation fee, in addition to the permit fee, shall be collected whether a permit is then or subsequently issued. The investigation fee shall be equal to the amount of the permit fee that is required by this code if a permit were to be issued. The payment of such investigation fee shall not exempt a person from compliance with other provisions of this code, nor from a penalty prescribed by law. Okay, so these two sections. Let's say somebody down the street's getting a water heater put in. The inspector drives by your house on his way down the street to go to take a look at this water heater, sees that you're putting in a water heater. He looks at his inspection request. He's like, well, this isn't the address for this water heater. So he can get out of his car, go over and say, what are you doing? You're putting in a water heater? Did you get a permit for that? You didn't get a permit. Well, therein lies, okay, your work commencing before your permit issuance, right? So he's going to sit there and put in an investigation. So now you're paying an investigation fee, which is going to be half the cost. I'm sorry, not half the cost. It's going to be the full cost of what a permit would be. Comes up, says, oh, well, yeah, you need a permit for this. So now you're paying the investigation fee, which is the cost of what a permit would have cost, plus the permit. So you're doubling up the permit cost just because you didn't get a permit to begin with. Fee refunds. The authority having jurisdiction shall be permitted to authorize the refunding of a fee as follows. The amount paid hereunder that was erroneously paid or collected, or refunding of not more than a percentage as determined by the jurisdiction where no work has been done under a permit issued in accordance with this code. The authority having jurisdiction shall not authorize the refunding of a fee paid except upon written application filed by the original permittee not to exceed 180 days after the date of fee payment. Inspections and testing. Plumbing systems for which a permit is required by this code shall be inspected by the authority having jurisdiction. No plumbing system or portion thereof shall be covered, concealed, or put into use until inspected and approved as prescribed by this code. Neither the authority having jurisdiction nor the jurisdiction shall be liable for expense entailed in the removal or replacement of material required to permit inspection. Plumbing systems regulated by this code shall not be connected to the water, the energy fuel supply, or the sewer system until authorized by the authority having jurisdiction. So here we have one deal. No plumbing system or portion thereof shall be covered, concealed, or put into use until inspected, right? So that's going to come up again a couple times. Required inspections. New plumbing work and such portions of existing systems as affected by new work or changes shall be inspected by the authority having jurisdiction to ensure compliance with the requirements of this code and to ensure that the installation and the construction of the plumbing system are in accordance with approved plans. The authority having jurisdiction shall make the following inspections and other such inspections as necessary. The permittee or the permittee's authorized agent shall be responsible for scheduling of such inspections as follows. The underground inspection shall be made after trenches or ditches are excavated and bedded, piping installed, and before backfill is put in place. So we're going right back to that whole don't cover up the pipe thing. Rough-in inspection shall be made prior to the installation of wall or ceiling membranes. Again, don't cover it up. Final inspection shall be made upon completion of the installation. Uncovering. So we already mentioned it 3 times. Don't cover up the pipe, right? Where a drainage or plumbing system, building sewer, private sewage disposal system, or part thereof, which is installed, altered, or repaired, is covered or concealed before being inspected, tested, and approved as prescribed in this code, it shall be uncovered for inspection after notice to uncover the work has been issued to the responsible person by the authority having jurisdiction. The requirements of this section shall not be considered to prohibit the operation of plumbing installed to replace existing equipment or fixtures serving an occupied portion of the building in the event a request for inspection of such equipment or fixture has been filed with the authority having jurisdiction not more than 72 hours after such replacement work is completed and before a portion of such plumbing system is concealed by a permanent portion of the building. So, it's an occupied structure. You need to do the plumbing work. You got to get it done. Turn the system back on. You have 72 hours after your work was done and completed to get that thing inspected properly. Okay. Water supply system. No water supply system or portion thereof shall be covered or concealed until it has first been tested, inspected, and approved. Again, don't cover it. Covering or using. No plumbing or drainage system, building sewer, private sewer disposal system, or part thereof shall be covered, concealed, or put into use until it has been tested, inspected, and accepted as prescribed in this code. Again, don't cover it until it's inspected. Other inspections. In addition to the inspections required by this code, the authority shall be permitted to require other inspections to ascertain the compliance with the provisions of this code and other laws that are enforced by the authority having jurisdiction. Inspection requests. It shall be the duty of the person doing the work authorized by a permit to notify the authority having jurisdiction that such work is ready for inspection. The authority having jurisdiction shall be permitted to require that a request for inspection be filed not less than 1 workday before such inspection is desired. Such requests shall be permitted to be made in writing or by phone at the option of the authority, not less than 1 workday. So it needs to be, you can't call in the morning and say, hey, I need it inspected by 10 o'clock. Can't do that. You have to have at least a day's notice, 1 workday. It shall be the duty of the person requesting inspection in accordance with this code to provide access and means for inspection of such work. Advance notice. It shall be the duty of the person doing the work authorized by the permit to notify the authority having jurisdiction, orally or in writing, that said work is ready for inspection. Such notification shall be given not less than 24 hours before the work is to be inspected. So who's getting the permit? The owner or the person in charge of the property. Who's providing access? The person requesting inspection, right? Who's requesting inspection? The person doing the work who's authorized by the permit. So that's us. We call for the inspection, okay? Responsibility. It shall be the duty of the holder of a permit to make sure that the work will stand the test prescribed before giving the notification. The equipment, the material, the labor necessary for inspection or tests shall be furnished by the person to whom the permit is issued or by whom inspection is requested. Reinspections. A reinspection fee shall be permitted, not required, shall be permitted to be assessed for each inspection or reinspection where such portion of work for which inspection is called is not complete or where required corrections have not been made. This provision shall not be interpreted as requiring reinspection fees the first time a job is rejected for failure to be in accordance with the requirements of this code, but more as a controlling of the practice of calling for inspections before the job is ready for inspections or reinspection. Reinspection fees shall be permitted to be assessed where the approved plans are not readily available to the inspector for failure to provide access on the date for which the inspection is requested, or for deviating from the plans requiring the approval of the authority having jurisdiction. To obtain reinspection, the applicant shall file an application therefore in writing upon a form furnished for that purpose and pay the reinspection fee in accordance with Table 104.5. In instances where reinspection fees have been assessed, no additional inspection of the work will be performed until the required fees have been paid. Plumbing systems shall be tested and approved in accordance with this code or the authority having jurisdiction. Tests shall be conducted in the presence of the authority having jurisdiction or the authority having jurisdiction's duly appointed representative. No test or inspection shall be required where a plumbing system or part thereof is set up for exhibition purposes and has no connection with a water or drainage system. So if you're doing like a temporary system just to show it off, then you don't need a permit. In cases where it would be impractical to provide the required water or air test, or for minor installations and repairs, the authority shall be permitted to make such inspection as deemed advisable in order to be assured that the work has been performed in accordance with the intent of this code. Joints and connections in the plumbing system shall be gas tight and watertight for the pressures required by the test. An air test shall be used in testing the sanitary condition of the drainage or plumbing system of building premises where there is no reason to believe that it has become defective. In buildings or premises condemned by the authority having jurisdiction, in buildings or premises condemned by the authority having jurisdiction because of an insanitary condition of the plumbing system or part thereof, the alterations in such system shall be in accordance with the requirements of this code. Retesting. Where the authority having jurisdiction finds that the work will not pass the test, necessary corrections shall be made and the work shall be resubmitted for test or reinspection. Approval. Where prescribed tests and inspections indicate that the work is in accordance with this code, a certificate of approval shall be issued by the authority to the permittee on demand. No person shall make connections from a source of energy or fuel to a plumbing system or equipment regulated by this code, and for which a permit is required until approved by the authority. No person shall make connection from a water supply line, nor shall connect to a sewer system regulated by this code, and for which a permit is required until approved by the authority having jurisdiction. The authority having jurisdiction shall be permitted to authorize temporary connection of the plumbing equipment to the source of energy or fuel for the purpose of testing the equipment. Violations and penalties. Excuse me. It shall be unlawful for a person, firm, or corporation to erect, construct, enlarge, alter, repair, move, improve, remove, convert, demolish, equip, use, or maintain plumbing, or permit the same to be done in violation of this code. Notices of correction or violation. Notices of correction or violation shall be written by the authority having jurisdiction and shall be permitted to be posted at the time of the work or mailed or delivered to the permittee or their authorized representative. Refusal, failure, or neglect to comply with such notice or order within 10 days of receipt thereof shall be considered a violation of this code and shall be subject to the penalties set forth by the governing laws of the jurisdiction. So a notice of correction. it's when you do something so bad, the inspector's like, okay, yeah, no. I mean, because if you fail an inspection, he's like, fix it, I'll come back and, you know, we'll have reinspection. But if it gets to a point of notice, a notice of correction, you have 10 days to comply or I'm shutting it down. I have actually used this to my advantage on projects before. One instance, I was doing a large project and the plans called for me to do a certain installation. It was a code violation, just flagrant code violation. So I wrote what's called a request for information, submitted it to the architect, submitted it to the engineer, submitted it to the construction management company. And the request for information came back. I proposed an alternative method of installation in that RFI. Came back, no, you do not get to change this. It's the way we want it, and you're going to do it. I replied back to that RFI with a follow-up, a revision. Please, and I gave the code sections to where it was a violation. Recommend doing it this way, which is code. Came back again, second time. Do it as planned. That was it. Just do it per plan. So I put it in per plan because I was told to put it in per plan. Called for inspection. When I contacted the inspector, and this is important, when you work on large projects, you get to know that inspector. You get to know who he is, okay? It's very important that you are on good terms with your inspectors. So I called him, I said, I need you to come inspect this. When you come out, could you please give me a notice of correction? And you'll see why when you get out here. He said, you want me to fail your work? And I said, yes. He said, well, why did you put something in that you knew was going to fail? I said, just come out here and I'll show you. So the inspector showed up. I showed him the request for information. I said, this is what they wanted. I put it in. This is what I wanted to do. And he says, yeah, that's what you should have done. And so he said, don't worry, I'll write you your notice of correction. So I failed my test on purpose. I submitted a third request. And when I submitted the third request, I submitted this notice of correction because this notice of correction gave us 10 days to comply. And then if we didn't comply within those 10 days, the entire project was going to get shut down. So the third RFI came back and I got my change order, but I got to charge twice as much because now you have to pay me for the work that I did put in, that I didn't want to put in, and you have to pay me to take out that work that I put in that I didn't want to put in. And then you have to pay me to put in the work that should have been put in the first place. So they had to pay twice as much for their change order because of that. Penalties. A person, firm, or corporation violating a provision of this code shall be deemed guilty of a misdemeanor, and upon conviction thereof, shall be punishable by a fine, imprisonment, or both, set forth by the governing laws of the jurisdiction. Each separate day or portion thereof during which a violation of this code occurs or continues shall be deemed to constitute a separate offense. This thing used to scare the living daylights out of me when I was an apprentice. I was so afraid of making a mistake. But this is when you're deemed guilty, okay? And this is when you are convicted. And this is when you are knowingly and willingly doing a violation of the code. If you make a mistake, you make a mistake, and you're not going to get convicted of it. So, well, I mean, in the plumbing field. Stop orders. Where work is being done contrary to the provisions of this code, the authority shall be permitted to order the work stopped by notice in writing served on persons engaged in the doing or causing such work to be done. And such persons shall forthwith stop work until authorized by the authority to proceed with the work. And that means the plumbing inspector can stop the plumbing work from being done, but he can also stop the whole project. The electrical inspector can do the same thing. I was on a project where the electrical inspector had conflict with the electrical contractor and put a stop work order on the entire project until it was alleviated. Authority to disconnect utilities in emergencies. The authority having jurisdiction shall have the authority to disconnect a plumbing system to a building, structure, or equipment regulated by this code in case of an emergency where necessary to eliminate an immediate hazard to life or property. Authority to condemn, where the authority having jurisdiction ascertains that a plumbing system or portion thereof regulated by this code has become hazardous to life, health, or property, or has become insanitary, the authority having jurisdiction shall order in writing that such plumbing either be removed or placed in a safe or sanitary condition. The order shall fix a reasonable time limit for compliance. No person shall use or maintain defective plumbing after receiving such notice. Where such plumbing system is to be disconnected, written notice shall be given. In cases of immediate danger to life or property, such disconnection shall be permitted to be made immediately without such notice. A Board of Appeals. In order to hear and decide appeals of orders, decisions, or determinations made by the authority having jurisdiction relative to the application and interpretations of this code, there shall be and is hereby created a Board of Appeals consisting of members who are qualified by experience and training to pass upon matters pertaining to plumbing design, construction, and maintenance, and the public health aspects of plumbing systems, and who are not employees of the jurisdiction. The authority having jurisdiction shall be an ex officio member and shall act as secretary to the said board, but shall have no vote upon a matter before the board. The Board of Appeals shall be appointed by the governing body and shall hold office at its pleasure. The board shall adopt rules of procedure for conducting its business and shall render decisions and findings in writing to the appellant with a duplicate copy of the authority having jurisdiction. So now you have the authority having jurisdiction telling somebody that you had a code violation and it's an egregious violation. You can take and say, well, I think you're wrong, so I want to take it to the Board of Appeals. The Board of Appeals are a series of different individuals that are not part of the authority having jurisdiction. They're other contractors, they're tradesmen, they're people like me, somebody like me, you know, they're part of that Board of Appeals. I'm not. I'm just saying, you know, they would pick somebody who is trained in the field for an extended period of time. They listen to it. They're like a mediator, you know, and they can pass off their judgment. Okay. This is the limitation of authority. The Board of Appeals shall have no authority relative to interpretation of the administrative provisions of this code, nor shall the board be empowered to waive the requirements of the code. So we can't waive the requirement of a code. We can't sit there. We don't have authority to interpret the administrative provision of the code, but we can sit there and say, yes, this was incorrect because this is what the code says. And he was correct. Or, yeah, sorry, man, but the authority, they have, you know, they have the right here. So we try to self-govern ourselves as much as we possibly can. That's why this code book is written every 3 years, and we, the plumbing field, we write this code book. Okay, we submit it to the municipalities, and they either approve it or they don't. You know, they either adopt it or they don't adopt it. But we write it. The cities don't write it. The municipalities don't write it. We, the plumbers, write our own. So this is the last section of chapter 1, and this is table 104.5. These are your plumbing permit fees. So this is what you get charged for in your typical fee or your typical permit. You get charged, permit issuance. So issuing each permit, you get a fee for it. For issuing each supplemental permit, additional fees. For each plumbing fixture on one trap or a set of fixtures on one trap, fee. For each building sewer and each trailer park sewer, rainwater system, cesspools, private sewage disposal system, water heater, vent, or both, gas piping, each additional gas piping outlet. So you have up to 5 outlets for one, and then you have each additional one after that. Industrial waste pretreatment interceptors, grease interceptors, each installation, alteration, or repair of a water pipe, water treating equipment, or both. For every repair or alteration of a drain or vent pipe. Lawn sprinklers, believe it or not. Backflow protection device, atmospheric type vacuum breakers, backflow protection devices, gray water systems, initial installation testing of a reclaimed water system, each annual cross connection test of a reclaimed water system, med gas, up to 5 inlets and outlets for each specific gas, for each additional med gas inlet or outlet. And then you have the inspections and fees. Inspections outside of normal business hours, you got to pay a fee for. Re-inspection fees, you got to pay a fee for, like we said. Inspections for which no fee is specifically indicated. And additional plan review required by changes, additions, or revisions. So that is pretty much the permits that are allotted to us. In some municipalities, they go off of all of this pretty strictly. Some of them, they don't do every single one of these. So again, that's table 104.5 at the very end of chapter 1, which we are at. Now, really quick, that little intro that I drew for you for this video, it said the application for permit was up for revise and resubmit. And the reason for that was because the word permit was missing the R. And this is just to show you how strict and stringent some of these applications for permits can be. Obviously, this application for permit is such a basic application. You almost wish this is the way it was, but it's not. It's not necessarily that way. So yeah, I did that just to show you that missing one letter out of one word, it can be that detailed for some of these plan reviews. So that's it for this video. I look forward to doing more videos for you, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Have a good night.